So this iPhone 14 Pro Max is my first iPhone ever coming from a cheap Android phone that I had for the past 4 years. And the first thing I noticed is that the unboxing is very premium, which is something you would expect really from a phone with that price. And the other thing that I noticed very quickly is that this phone is very heavy. It's at least triple the weight of my old phone, but I got used to it very quickly. I don't think it's an issue. And the other thing that I was amazed by is the size of the cameras. I mean, look at these. They are huge, but of course that's a good thing because bigger cameras mean bigger sensors, which means better quality. And because of that camera bump, I noticed that the phone can wobble a bit on a flat surface like a table, but it's not a problem at all. And I have to say, this screen is really bright. Apple says that this screen can go up to 2000 nits, and I've not tested it in direct sunlight because, you know, I live in the UK and there's no sun. But indoors, the screen is very bright, and you could tell that this is a very high quality screen. And if we compare it to my iPad, which I considered to be quite bright, you can see that it is noticeably brighter, which is a really good thing. And speaking of the screen, one of the new features that we have on the new 14 Pro and Pro Max is the dynamic island, and everyone is talking about how clever it is from Apple to turn something ugly like a notch to something that's actually quite beautiful and quite useful sometimes. I mean, I honestly love the smoothness of the animations that this thing have. It comes in handy when you have multiple apps open like maps and music, because this dynamic island can split and turns into something like a multitasking dynamic island. I don't know, but I think it's quite useful sometimes, and I do think it's way better than a notch. Not a game changer by any means, and you probably shouldn't upgrade just for the dynamic island, but I think it's cool. As I've mentioned, that the screen is huge and that the phone is heavy, so the one hand situation is quite tricky. I tried to use the phone in one hand, but it doesn't work. You have to use two hands, or you can use one hand just for scrolling or simple stuff. But if you really want to use the phone, it's a bit tricky. Most of the time you actually have to use two hands. Like, for example, how the hell am I supposed to get into my notification with one hand? It's physically impossible. I tried to do a trick where you can tap the back of the phone twice to get to the notification center, but it's not very reliable. I didn't like it. I didn't have that much time to play with the cameras, but so far this thing is taking some very impressive photos and videos. But I will be testing those cameras a lot in the next few weeks, and I will talk about them in the full review coming after a couple of weeks or so. But there are some things that I noticed very quickly. One of them is that the iPhone just oversharps the photos sometimes, or I mean most of the times, and the size of the videos and the photos is very big, especially if you take 4K 60 frame per second videos or take raw photos. I mean, you just can't deal with that size. But it's fair to say that they are very good quality, especially in low light, and the videos are just as I expected, very smooth and high quality. Honestly, I've never seen something like that on a smartphone. And my favorite new thing about these cameras is that you can actually zoom 2x. I know this might sound like a small thing, but one of the main things that I use these cameras for is taking portrait of people, and having 2x is just really nice, because I really like the 3x camera to take portrait photos, because the face just looks much better on a zoom lens, where if you take it with the main camera you just look ugly. But I noticed that most of the time the 3x is just too much and you have to go back a few steps to take the photo. So I think the 2x option is the perfect zoom. But it's really funny, I don't know if anyone noticed, but whenever you take a picture with the iPhone, you just go to the preview, wait for a few seconds, and it would look completely different. I don't know if the processing would take sometimes, or if that's a normal thing. I don't know, it's just weird to me. I got the gold color, and I would love it to be a bit more goldier, because it's not very gold. I mean, from distance it looks white, but if you come closer to it, you can see the gold color. I don't regret it, it's really nice, but I wish it was more gold. I also got a clear case because I just don't want to hide my iPhone with a black case, and I just like the aesthetics, and I will do a full review of it, so if you want to see that, it's in the description when it's out. The other thing that impressed me is the screen protector, and I will also do a review on it. I also love MagSafe, and the one thing that I think everyone should get if you drive is a MagSafe charger and a mount in your car. It's really good. I don't want to say anymore because I will do a full review on it. It's also in the description when it's out. After spending a few days with this phone, the thing that I noticed and really love is the haptics. Whenever you do something on this phone, it just has a really good haptic engine, which is something I've not experienced before with any phone, and I really like it. It just makes using the phone much more fun and satisfying. I also had an iPad Pro and AirPods before the iPhone, which is, I think, not many people do, but when I got the iPhone, I think it's like the missing piece, because it completed the whole ecosystem and it's just unbelievably good. And now I get why people talk about the ecosystem so much, and I think I now understand why people love it so much. For example, you would be listening on something on your phone and you just play something on your iPad and the AirPods just automatically switch. It's just so magical. The same thing with the universal clipboard. You just copy something from a device and you just copy it on the other one, and if I want a hotspot from my iPad, I don't have to physically enable the hotspot from my iPhone. I can just enable it straight from my iPad, and it's just those small things that add up that make your experience way better. And speaking of smooth, the software on this phone, iOS 16, is just so impressive. Didn't have any bugs or anything that ruined my... One of the reasons that I got the Pro is the 120 Hz. I know most people wouldn't notice. I just notice it a lot because I've got 120 Hz iPad as well, so I'm used to it. Other people might not notice it and it's not a big deal for them, but I consider it as an essential and would not buy any new devices without having at least 120 Hz. Always on display is the most controversial thing about this phone. Most people on Twitter just disable it straight away, but after spending a few days with it, I honestly love it. I think it's because I have a few case scenarios where I found the always on display useful. I work as a delivery driver, and having an always on display in my car is honestly very useful. I just put it on the car mount and I could see any notifications and my time and my widgets. It's just very useful. Another use case is when I work out, I just put it on the floor, and this is useful because I can see the time, and that's important because I usually take a minute rest between sets, and having a phone that could tell you if a minute has gone by is just very nice. The same situation is when I use it on my desk. I just leave it on my desk and it's something I could use to see the time and the widgets that could tell me the weather, the tasks I need to do, and other things. I just enjoy using it. I know many people don't like it, and I get why that is the case. I think it's because it gives people anxiety, because the always on display on the iPhone is not very dark. Sometimes you might get confused if the screen is on or off. So I totally get why people don't like it, and I've seen a lot of people complain that it will affect the battery life, but that is not the case for me, at least for the past a few days that I had this phone. But I will be doing some more testing to see if it's actually affecting my battery life or not. And speaking of battery life, this thing is amazing in terms of battery life. I think it has the best battery life on a smartphone, except the 13 Pro Max. I think that one has a bit better battery life. But anyway, I think it lasts for about 10 to 12 hours, I've not tested it a lot, but I will talk about it more in the review. Performance, I don't think I need to talk about that a lot. It's very fast and very reliable, and you could play games on the highest graphics and frame rates, no problem with that at all. The speakers are very good, but I don't know, I thought they would be better, maybe because I was shocked by the quality of the speakers on the iPad when I got them, so I thought it would be also shocking on the iPhone, but it's not. It's very good, but it's not like shocking. Mics are also very high quality, and yeah, not many negatives about this phone except the insane price, which is £1,200, which is not little by any means, but I think it's worth it because I will be using this phone for at least 3 to 5 years, and I consider it as an investment. So yeah, I do recommend it if you can afford this